When you are directing a film, one of the biggest and most important choices you can make is who will be your cinematographer. Cinematography defines the visual dimension of the film, and who you choose can make or break how the film works. So more and more directors are choosing themselves as the cinematographer and deciding that they will take on that additional responsibility, wear the additional hat. And I think if you haven't worked in film, or you've worked in film at a different level, like commercials or maybe documentaries, this seems like a confusing choice because directors are already under so much pressure and already have so much on their plate. Why would they take on a whole nother area, the largest and most complex technical aspect of the film, as well as all the logistical, financial, acting, emotional, screenwriting, storytelling aspect of the film as well. So as a director cinematographer, I wanted to go through that choice today and give you 5 reasons why you should probably become your own cinematographer if you're directing films. This is a very personal choice and it's not going to apply to everyone, but I have found over the last couple of years that being my own cinematographer gives me a lot more freedom, a lot less, saves me a lot of time. And more, this is becoming not the default, but certain directors are choosing to do this. And Alfonso Cuarón for Roma won the Best Directing and Best Cinematography Oscar on the same night. So people are doing it at a very high level. So let's dive in. Probably the biggest reason that you would choose to be your own cinematographer is there is less communication. Now, that may seem strange because we always hear we want more communication, more people talking, but having to communicate your entire vision to somebody else and then every step of the way discuss whether or not the choices they're making are aligning with that vision, and having to constantly share how much time we have or what the other factors are, is a huge investment of time. And sometimes it's easier just to pick up the camera and do it yourself. Sometimes it is easier, since you already know all those things, if you can learn enough about a camera to get the image that you're happy with, then you don't have to go through all of that back and forth, all of those hours of collaboration with a third party. On a big film, we're talking, 20 crew, say, so we're like 750,000 and more. There is the cinematographer sort of acts as a go-between, a translator between the director and the crew. But if you're they're doing a lot of things. They're, talking to rental houses. They're talking to, hiring and briefing gaffers and grips and camera operators and all these things. And on a bigger movie, you're able to have a director who tells the cinematographer one thing, and then gives him or her the outline of the film, and then the cinematographer breaks it up and then gives the little bits that each part of the crew need to do what they need to do. On a smaller movie with just 3 or 4 people in the camera department, that's not necessarily the truth. But I guess for Roma, Alfonso Cuarón had maybe a gaffer that he really trusted. He really knew his style, and that gaffer served as the sort of go-between between him and everybody, because you can't have 50-person crew all coming with their questions to the director. So the cinematography position sort of does a good job of filtering that, but on a smaller crew you are going to relate to all those people. So the number one reason is basically to eliminate that all that discussion and then all of that oversight. Also, in with that same sort of distance that you now have between the person who's shooting the film and the person who's directing the film, things can get lost. Conflicts can happen. A scene can be all ready to be shot. The DP set everything up and lit it, and then the director sees the frame and says, this is not right, this doesn't work. And then they have to have this discussion while everybody waits, what the problem is and how to fix it. And sometimes, people dig their heels in and say, oh, that's going to take too long, or no, it's not. Or, so I would say more than director-producer conflict, more than director-lead actor conflict, it's director-cinematographer in the past conflict that has been the largest source of disruption to the filmmaking process, because cinematographers had, before digital, and especially before like high quality, cheap, accessible digital era that we're now in, cinematographers are sort of the gatekeeper of the technical aspect of the film, and so they could stand up to a director and be like, no, we can't do it the way you want. It's going to take too long, or it's not possible. And so then you would have this conflict. And if you're your own cinematographer, you understand the camera, you understand lights, you know what you need, you know how long it's going to take, you know how to get it, you should just go ahead and do it. I would say the second biggest reason that you should consider becoming your own cinematographer is a direct connection to the actor. Christopher Doyle, who is a fantastic and famous cinematographer of some of Wong Kar-wai's films and other movies, his opinion that the most important interaction on the film is between the person on camera and the person operating the camera, almost as though the actor is performing for that person. That's the person that they're looking at, or they can know is capturing the performance. So he was a huge believer in the power of that connection. And so he would always struggle or aim to be the best audience that he could be for the actor, because he was the one behind the camera that the actor was acting for. And when you're a director who's off and away in a tent, somewhere else, it's very difficult for the actor to be acting for you. Whereas if you're right there with them, with the camera on a tripod or on your shoulder, or however you're controlling the camera, the actor is acting for you. You get a lot more energy. You tend to get a better performance, because when you're closer, anytime you want, you can look up and actually see what the actor is doing rather than looking down at a little screen. You can. It's impossible to be that close to an actor and not affect them with your presence. And on bigger films, yes, you have 5 cameras and they're just camera operators who just hide for the day. There's a theory that is why bigger films don't have the same power in their performances, because there is no connection between the audience represented by the camera operator and the actor who's performing. The third reason to become your own cinematographer is, rather than having to explain your style and the way that you want the film to be shot to someone else and then have them try and capture that, you can be the one who's capturing that, refining it, and sort of discovering your style. You may love, lighting with tube lights because of the look they give, or one thing I love is uplight tubes like this guy here, because it puts a small little catch light in the person's eye and it adds this sense of emotionality. I would use them, and I do use them all the time, because I just love the way that it looks. And that was something that I discovered for myself, and something I use again and again. When you just tell a cinematographer, oh, I really want 2-foot catch light tubes in all the actors' close-ups, they're like, oh, how does this factor in? You have to then convince them of that and have that discussion. And whereas when you're doing it yourself, you're able to, explore and develop a relationship with like color. And sometimes it is really difficult to articulate why a shot works or doesn't work. And it is really frustrating for the cinematographer when you say, I don't like it. And they say, why? Or what can we change? And you're like, I'm not sure. But when you're the cinematographer yourself, you have to then discover for yourself what it is, and you have to like hone your style. It is much easier to do when you're the one calling the shots, when you're the one setting up the camera, when you're the one lighting it. You feel much more attached to the images. It becomes much more your film. And I think that a film that you write, direct, and shoot is definitely far more it gives the audience the experience of being in someone else's head, of seeing the world as they see it, which for me is one of the joys of cinema, to be able to experience reality through a different set of eyes. And the more cooks there are in the kitchen, the less you have that. So I think you'll see more and more as technology allows it, and as education allows it, you'll see more and more directors move to become their own cinematographers. The fourth reason that I think this is a great idea is that you have one less person to pay, one less person to organize, one less car to park, one less mouth to feed. So it lowers the barrier to shooting. I mean, you can have an idea, grab a camera, and go shoot it. You don't need to see if someone's free, get them there, pay them, feed them, all those things. If you're the one with the camera, if you're the one shooting it, you're the one with the idea, it's so much easier to go out there and try things. And I think it's through those trials that you experiment and end up finding something that is truly your own. So it leads to, along with the previous point, the idea that there's less friction, there's less obstacles between you and actually pressing record, means that you shoot more often, you get better, and sooner or later it becomes second nature. The last thing I'll say about, and the fifth thing I'll say about being your own cinematographer, is you get a sense of how much you can get away with, or how you can shoot a scene, or in a scene, what's important and what's not important. And Clint Eastwood is a great example of this. He was an actor who started directing his own films because he got sick of the directors doing what he considered too many takes in order to get too much coverage or too many attempts at telling the story, whereas he felt that every extra take you did not only distracted and diminished the spontaneity of the magic of that first time you do it, but he also it sort of wore out the actor for the next scene, where their first take wouldn't be as good because they had done 15 takes of the previous one. And as shooting wore on, the actor had, less and less stamina, less and less energy to give to the camera, because you had shot him walking down the stairs 15 times or done this scene in the diner again and again and again. Now, Eastwood is a very successful director. He's won the Oscar multiple times. His films are, he's got a huge body of work. His films have been very successful. People like his movies. A lot of people criticize them for kind of being lazy. Like there are a lot of times where he does a single take and the scene is kind of awkward or blocky or doesn't really work. And you'd think, well, if he'd only done 2 or 3 more takes, or taken the time to make this scene work, and realize its potential. But Eastwood feels like the audience will kind of forgive the small pieces that are out of place, if they want the film. And he's not prepared to do, he's been able to do a huge amount of movies because he shoots them so quickly, and he really kind of, I won't say sleepwalks through them. He puts his energy into them, but he does 1 and 2 takes max. He takes it a pretty leisurely pace. And on the set of, I think, Magnum Force, where he'd been offered the directing chair but thought that was too much work because it's a Dirty Harry movie, he got someone else in, and then he drove the other guy crazy because the other guy would do 1 or 2 takes, and then he'd like, okay, I'm going to move the camera again, like this side as well, and I'm going to change this little detail, and Clint Eastwood would be like, nope, I'm done. I did my 2, I'm out of here. And so the director would be left with like not knowing if he had the scene or not. And it's much better off if you're the director in that capacity, rather than being a star who refuses to do the takes the director needs. So same with cinematography. If you're the one shooting it, you know what's important to you. If you get a great performance but the focus is a little buzzy in some of the takes, you might think that's fine. If you get a beautiful tracking shot and everything coordinates perfectly, but the actor stumbles on their line, you get to say, as the director and cinematographer, you get to say, I love that take. That's the one I'm putting in the film. I don't care about the stumbling on the line. It adds realism or whatever it is. So you get to decide what's important to you in the film. Whereas a cinematographer, if you're using one, can get really paranoid that they'll be judged by the quote unquote bad cinematography of someone who's underlit, someone who's out of focus, a stand in the background. Some cinematographers are driven crazy by the fact that you can see a little edge of a C-stand on the corner of the frame. And as the director, you might not care. I don't care. I can always take it out in post. But the cinematographers, then you have this conflict of like, oh, we got to shoot that again. We can't have the stand. These sort of discussions don't need to happen when you're the one operating the camera and lighting the scene. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that being a cinematographer on your own film will take away from your ability to direct the talent. Will take away from your logistical organization time. It will take away from your ability to step back from what you've shot and see if the storytelling and the intent of the scene is working as it should, because it can be very distracting to operate a camera and be worrying about all those little things. So it comes down to a personal decision, and I encourage every director to at least try it. Go and shoot a short little scene yourself, and see if the pros outweigh the cons. It's not to say that those deficiencies can't be made up for in pre-production, right? Like I have a couple programs. One's called Satellite, where you build the scene, you light it, then you can move the camera around. So it means you can spend time on the set before you step on set. You can spend time there virtually. And that's been a great help for me to understand my shooting directions, my blocking. And so when I show up to shoot, I often have a really good idea of what I want to get. And then it means that the cinematography is technically less demanding, and it allows me to be able to still have that, 30,000 foot view of the scene and all the parts and how they're interacting. So definitely not for everyone. Experiment with it, see if it is something that is going to benefit your storytelling and your process for all the reasons that I mentioned, and see how it works for you. I really enjoy it. I would have a hard time going back now to having someone else shoot my films. I really feel like that's something that I do myself. Don't let your stories die inside you. Find a way to bring them out into the world. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.